Hi everybody, I'm here in Yellowknife, Northwest Territory, and I'm with Lydia, and I'm going to just get right to it. Lydia works with an organization that does a couple of different things, and I'll let her explain.
The John Howard Society is a nonprofit charitable organization that is interested in social justice and examining just and effective causes to the consequences of crime.
What? Yeah, go ahead.
All that to say, we operate a community justice program, which is also known as alternative measures or court diversion, where we can get people away from the criminal justice system to work on less serious offenses in the community, creating balance and restoration and trying to find better solutions than hooking people into a criminal justice system that is kind of like a criminal university and gets them snagged.
Right.
And then also we operate a day shelter for homeless and intoxicated people to try and divert some of the time being spent. The police, ambulance, hospital are all spending far too much time with the homeless, intoxicated population. So this way we can find other solutions to help them out.
Right. Now you're saying it's $250 a day to keep somebody in prison.
It's about $250 a day to house an offender per day.
So, I mean, even if you don't think about it from the compassion aspect, it's just good business, good sense to help people to rehabilitate.
You know, when we're spending that kind of money to keep somebody incarcerated, we're losing human potential. It's a big waste of human potential, in addition to not the best or most effective way to address a housing strategy or a mental health strategy or how to get people out to work.
Right. And how does it interrelate with homelessness? I mean,
Well, what we see a large number of people who are out on the streets, largely because of mental health issues, because of substance abuse issues, and here in the Northwest Territories, where we have the highest per capita number of people who attended Indian residential schools, and so we've got those survivors and then the survivors of those survivors, so sort of intergenerational or next generation survivors of a genocide that existed here for 150 years in this country.
Wow. And we're still, I mean, because there's so much damage and we're only now starting to hurt. There's still, I mean, generational, it's basically a generational curse where you're seeing it over and over again. Out of everybody that I've spoken to, and I'm sure I'm going to meet more people and learn so much more. I'm messed up over the residential school topic, but can you explain a little more? I mean, you were talking about living in tents and how they would fly in and take the children, and could you explain a little more about the residential schools and the abuse?
Sure. Well, try and imagine, if you will, let's go back 50 or 60 years ago, when Aboriginal people in the North largely were nomadic, living a very traditional lifestyle on the land, hunting, fishing, gathering. And so they would move seasonally to the different, maybe where they go fishing, where they go hunting, and so on. And so it would be a large group of extended family, 30 to 60 people, traveling on the land and going to, living in skin tents. And because their traditional camping grounds or fishing grounds were always the same, certainly the Indian agents and the bush pilots knew where to find them. Would simply arrive in the late summer, early fall, take all of the children away, sometimes thousands of kilometers away, and keep them for, if not the whole school year, maybe many school years. Some students never returned for 10 years or longer.
Wow.
And so you've got, you've got children removed from their families, removed from their language, their culture, their tradition, the love and support of their family and extended family. You've got the grieving family left behind who later learned that they were unable to protect their children. So there was lots of unresolved or, these tensions in family members never resolved. Right. There's people who, their elderly parents died without them ever talking about what it meant to go and be physically, emotionally, spiritually, or sexually abused in residential school.
And you were telling me, I mean, it was very easy for the church to come in and take the kids because the creation theory was very similar. So they're saying, oh, the kids are going to be okay with the church. But then, for one example, you were saying that known pedophiles, priests that were known pedophiles, were sent up here because who cares about, natives being abused?
Yeah, it was a kind of a punishment for those who had already been transgressing in other locations. And so families who had converted to Christianity had great faith that, oh, my children will be fine, they're with the church, that's a good thing. And it was years later that they started to learn of the atrocities. And, even siblings being separated, not being allowed to speak with one another. There was things going on like in Inuvik, for example, where there was both an Anglican and a Catholic student hall. These kids were so pitted against one another that if they did return home for the summers, cousins wouldn't speak to one another because they had this great division of the two different churches that was supported and encouraged while they were attending.
Wow. And the sexual abuse, and it's gone from families to families. Do you want to touch on that at all?
Well, I work with a generation of men who attended residential school, most of whom were sexually molested as children, but I also work with a generation of men who were molested not by strangers, but by their own family members, by uncles or grandfathers and other members of the community. So, because there's so much more trust in your family, the hurt and the pain is so much greater when it's your own family who's because of the harm they've come to now. Right. Continuing that harm.
No, you just spoke at a meeting. The government's starting a healing process of acknowledging and saying we're sorry, which is hopefully going to take some responsibility, because that's the first steps. There's lots of healing that needs to be done here. And you shared your own story. I don't know if you feel comfortable, you can say no, about how it's come even over into, our culture and our generation.
Well, and yeah, we do have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission here in Canada now that has held 2 out of 7 national events. But in addition to that, they're doing a number of smaller events in many communities. And so I felt compelled to give a statement to the commissioners, because the first impact that I felt in residential school was when I met and fell in love with a residential school survivor more than 20 years ago, when none of us was talking about residential school. So I certainly didn't understand what I was getting into, and the 22 years that we've known each other, and the relationship has taken many twists and turns over the years, and we're working hard to make it work. But rather than talking about that and him, because he has his own story to tell, a little over a year ago I was impacted when I had been attacked and beaten and strangled and sexually assaulted right back here in this room by a young man who was blacked out on alcohol and drugs, when I learned later that he had been molested as a child by his father, who had been molested as a child in residential school. So it's like a pyramid where, the few abusers that were here have spread their harm so far. It's just growing and growing, and until and unless we start to help and heal people and help them to find their way onto the path that links them to their culture and history. We're talking about people who survive in Arctic conditions. We've got some real survivors here, and it's their culture and their tradition that keeps them strong. And some have lost their way and are causing harm because of the harm that they've experienced.
You have so much courage, and you were telling me, your own story about, the worst thing that can happen to anybody was abuse, and how you had compassion for the person attacking you. That's, oh my gosh, you're such a strong person.
Well, I think that it was largely to him, because when he came out of his blackout, it was quite clear that he didn't know where he was. When he recognized me and the harm he had caused, he was instantly remorseful in trying to hurt himself, and continued that even when he'd done some time in jail. He still continued the remorse and spoke very caringly at his sentencing. And so for me, coming from a strong, healthy family background and knowing that he didn't, of course I feel for him and care and wonder what can we do, because it's more about how do we prevent future victims. I'm worried about what happens the next time he gets out of correctional custody. Will he be well enough and strong enough not to hurt himself or others?
But he was going to kill himself, and you saved his life. This is somebody who just attacked you.
I'm pretty stubborn.
And it's not, gosh, I have so much respect and honor and for you. And I've met a lot of courageous people, but gosh, I've been messed up ever since you told me that story. So, thank you.
Yeah, it's understanding the harm that he experienced, but I was the one who was here to see the change as he came out of the blackout. So, when I understood it wasn't personal, that it wasn't me he was attacking, right. It really took all fear away. Like, I wasn't afraid of him. What are we going to do to help this young man to heal, to get on a path of being a productive, contributing member of society,
Right.
For the benefit of everyone.
Right, because he's only 25 years old. Putting him in jail is $250 a day, and you're throwing away a life.
That's right.
And you believe he should be rehabilitated.
Yeah, he needs to be reintegrated into the community so that he can be a contributing member, because when you work in a social development agency like John Howard, we believe that people can learn, grow, and change.
Right.
And you live in hope every day that somebody's going to hit that point where they're ready to turn their lives around.
Wow. Briefly, solutions. How do we mend this thing? How do we stop people from going to jail, get less people off the streets, and heal the communities?
I think reinvesting. I think that not investing in correctional and criminal justice systems, but reinvesting into healthy families, into any kind of programs we can. You know, when I attend youth court, I don't see any hockey moms there. I don't see any dog mushing moms there. I don't see the moms of the kids who are engaged with their family and community activities. So let's look at how to engage the kids, how to keep the families healthy and strong, how to help parents with the frustration of parenting, how to help them cope with parenting skills, and how do we keep kids in school? Because when we look at different populations, whether we want to compare any marginalized group, be it Aboriginal, people with disabilities, newcomers, any population we compare to mainstream, their employment levels, their salary levels, all of those start to level out with higher levels of education. When the disadvantaged group has a lower level of education, they're far more disadvantaged as a result. We know that, we've got the evidence, so let's invest in education, because that's what helps people get where they want to go in life.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being candid. You've really continued to open my eyes on this journey of learning for me. So, do you have a website people can look up your organization?
We are updating our website right now.
Oh my goodness!
But you can Google John Howard, and hopefully when you get John Howard NWT, you'll get to our updated website.
Oh, great, great. Anyways, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thanks, Mark.